Welcome to Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. In this podcast, we delve into the non-clinical aspects of dentistry with inspirational guests from across the profession. You will hear incredible life stories, pick up valuable business tips and be entertained. I'm Andy Acton and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Drevens. So, talking to Doug was the most enjoyable of hours, wasn't it? What an absolute gent.
Oh, brilliant. I love the fact of the music that he's interested in and what he does. Interesting thing on the scanning and litigation, which would be a good one for people to think about if when they're listening. So, I thought it was great. And he's just a nice guy, isn't he? Very self-effacing.
Yeah, and incredibly talented as well. I mean, he plays down the music side of his life heavily, but when you listen to the stuff that he's created, he's a good guy. But also, it shows that he's passionate about stuff, passionate about music, passionate about his family, passionate about digital dentistry. He's interested in things, and that really comes through.
Yeah, definitely. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Very enjoyable.
It was. Yeah. Another great one. We get so many. They keep coming.
Yeah, I think they're all just interesting people, aren't they, with interesting lives. Not only are they involved in dentistry in some way, but they're just interesting people. And I think that's what's fascinating about it all, really. Yeah,
and I think where you find people who are multifaceted, like Doug, it just brings that extra 1%, that extra degree that makes people slightly different. Now, good. People who enjoy that one, I'm sure. So welcome everybody, and here we are today. We are so over the moon because we are joined by Dr. Doug Watt, and he's the musical dentist. He's a dentist, he's a partner at the Euston Place Dental practice over in Leamington Spa, a musician, and if you haven't already, you should check out his content on Facebook and Instagram because he is a serious talent. Hi Doug, how you doing?
Very well, hi, how are you?
We are.
Hello,
good.
Yeah, good to see you. Look, even with the studio already ready to make some music.
That's a proper setup, isn't it? It's like we just dropped in on like some proper rock god, like it's an Aerosmith type guy, and he's just spun round in his chair to talk to us for a few minutes.
Hi guys, sorry, I was just chilling and playing with the band and nothing like that.
No pressure, Doug. Make sure you live up to it.
No. Yeah, I need to do the full rock star thing, don't I? And I don't know if I manage that. It's been a busy morning in surgery. I think my rock star vibes are gone.
And pick up a bottle of whiskey or something. That's
chamomile and honey tea to help my voice.
Here we are.
Slightly different level.
This is
seriously hard
Doug
stuff.
Says it is.
It could. Who knows what it could? It could be anything in there, anything at all.
It could.
Chamomile and honey tea. Whiskey. Yeah.
So to kick off, Doug, as someone who's now got a teenager in the house, what things do we need to know about you as a teenager that give us an insight to the person you are today?
I suppose. As a teenager, I guess sort of going into secondary school and things like that. I think most people are quite awkward and find that stage of their lives a bit difficult. I guess I spent a lot of my time playing the guitar and doing kickboxing and things to sort of just. I suppose I was never really pushed by my parents into music and hobbies, and so it was something that, as I came into my teenage years, I had an interest in and I wanted to get involved in. So I remember being in a music lesson when I was probably 12, 13 at school, secondary school, and the music teacher said, who wants to learn an instrument? And anyone got any interest in it? And I put my hand up and said electric guitar, which I think a lot of the cool kids thought was quite funny, the thought of me playing electric guitar. But I got into it, and I sort of spent most of my teenage years doing that. So I think it's an odd time of life, and I try and remind myself that for my now 13-year-old, how difficult it can be in trying to find yourself and discover who you are, and that strange balance between being your own person and being the person your parents tell you to be in certain situations. It's a very odd feeling, I suppose.
I think also at that time in life,
were you one of those guys?
Sorry, go on, Chris.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, were you one of those guys, Doug, that used to magically magic up a guitar at a moment? Like that you go somewhere and someone says, "Oh, what do we do tonight? And then they go, oh, I just happen to have a guitar.
Yeah, look at this. I could do that now. My magic trick. No, not at that point. I think I was probably a bit too self-conscious. And it's interesting. I was really quite into singing when I was in junior school, because I was in the choir and I was, doing all that kind of stuff. And I always enjoyed singing. But then I got to teenage years, went to secondary school and got a lot more self-conscious, and, thought of joining a choir terrified me, and the thought of actually singing in front of people scared the hell out of me. So no, I think I can only think of a few times, probably as I got into my university career, when I ended up at parties or things like I remember the final year of the BDSA conference. I took a guitar along and we sat in a bar till 3 a.m. playing and singing songs. So in a big group of people and things like that. So that was kind of, but that wasn't my teenage years. I was far too self-conscious to do that. I mean, I don't think it helped. I was 14 years old with size 15 feet and about 5'10" tall. So, I was L-shaped. Oh, wow. My feet stuck out almost as long. It was ridiculous. So yeah, luckily I kept growing, and then yeah.
But I think for so many people, teenage years are awkward, and it's interesting you kind of saying that kind of awkwardness that comes with it, because there's so much chucked at teenagers that they're not prepared for, like their sleep patterns changing and that kind of intensity of studying. There's a lot that you've got to get through at a time where, like you said, you're still trying to find out who you are and what you're about and what interests you. But it was nice to hear that your parents gave you the freedom to find the things that interest you, as opposed to kind of push you down certain routes.
Yeah, I think, I had 1 or 2 violin lessons when I was at school, in junior school and things like that, but my parents never pushed it. Yeah, I know. Horrible solo instrument.
They give?
I know. Why would you give that?
I never understand.
It's like, you'd quickly give them bagpipes, wouldn't you? Like horrendous noises.
Yeah, I never understand it. The worst sounding instrument, when you play it badly, they then give to small children. If that's not enough to put people off music forever.
Between probably a 7-year-old playing violin and a 5-year-old trying to play the recorder, that house does not sound nice, does it?
Yeah.
No, I think it was. My parents didn't push me, and I think you see a lot of the people who took up instruments at, say, 5 years old and then were pushed, and they hit grade 8 by 12, 13. They hit their teenage years and they're not interested. They don't want to carry on playing because the joy of it, I suppose, has been squashed a bit. They never did it because they enjoyed it. They did it because they were made to do it. And it's quite sad if you enjoy doing something, you pick it up. And I don't think until you're probably a teenager you can really work out what you really want to do or enjoy. I mean, speak to my younger son now, and he'd probably just want to bounce on trampolines all day and do forward rolls everywhere as a career. But obviously not a valid career choice. But might be. Who knows?
Doug, are you one of these irritating people who can play lots of different instruments or have a go at them? Sort of like, I can play the guitar, so I can do this and do that. And whilst you might not be as good as you are on one, but you're still sort of proficient and can knock a noise out.
No, I can play a few little bits on keyboard, but I'm not great by any stretch of the imagination. And I can play a few beats on the drums, but I'm not sort of the level of some people who just seem to pick up any instrument and be able to play it. I've spent a lot of time on my guitar. That is my thing, as you can probably see from actually you probably can't see because this clip down, there's about 7 guitars in a rack behind me and a load of other guitars around the room. So I'm very much a guitarist and secondarily a singer, and then probably drums would be my third, but I'm not great by any stretch.
I love the fact that you're like, well, yeah, not really. And I'm thinking, I can't play a guitar. I probably couldn't knock out a few tunes on a piano and drums. It's that all relative, isn't it? For me, a complete musical numbskull.
I suppose it's the difference between I can play a couple of things on the piano.
Yeah, but what you were saying, Doug, I've seen the bits that you upload online, and you clearly enjoy it. You clearly enjoy the creation of it. The putting it together, and like I say, it's really enjoyable to watch, because when you see people, particularly perhaps younger kids, who are told to do something, the joy isn't there. When it's something you're passionate about, it it just shows, and it shows in lots of different people in lots of different ways. So we've been chatting nice about music, but we've gone nowhere near dentistry yet, which is your day job. So what was it that sparked your interest
I can go
in
for
dentistry?
hours speaking without dentistry.
I bet.
So I could talk about guitars all day. No, I think when I was interested in a vocational job when I was in my sort of A levels, and it was always kind of a presumed thing that I'd just do my A levels, go to university. I didn't really ever. I think that's the way my parents pretty much said it was going to happen. So I presumed that was what was going to happen. And so a vocational job was relatively attractive because at the time there are a lot of reports of people coming out with pure science degrees out of uni not being able to get a job in any way linked to their degree or their subject matter, and with income of £8,000 a year or whatever it was, so lowest income you could get. And so I remember my mum talking to me about it and say, I maybe consider dentistry. I was interested in veterinary medicine. I did quite a lot of work experience in veterinary medicine. But my mum, I think she saw my dentist's car and his lifestyle, because my dad's a retired anaesthetist, and he used to work with a lot of dentists because he did the special needs dental list at the Birmingham Dental Hospital, and so our dentist was someone my dad knew, and I think my mum saw it. He was driving a nice car, he had a nice lifestyle, and saw my dad going out at 3 a.m. to go and do an emergency on call or whatever. So I think at that point, mum probably said to me, do something that's a bit more family centric, a bit more family friendly. And she suggested dentistry, and I did, and I suppose I didn't really understand what I was getting into or what to expect until I got to uni, which I think a lot of the students don't. When you're 18 years old and you've got to make a decision on how you're going to spend the rest of your natural existence, it's a bit of a big ask at that age, isn't it?
Yeah, and quite often people are guided by somebody, but it sounds like your mum had really good kind of logic to why it would work for you.
Yeah.
And so you
I think she was.
So go
on. I think she was not burned, but somewhat aware of how my dad's career in hospital medicine was, very, very hard, and hard on him, but also a big sort of part of all our lives. So I think, she was the one who sort of pushed me in the direction of dentistry. And I think it was the right thing. I wanted to go to London and do a diploma in guitar playing for the year and then become a rock star. But, could have been a very different scenario now. I could have been the slightly slimmer, slightly better looking Lewis Capaldi.
So you didn't go to London to be a rock star. You went to Birmingham to become a dentist. No. So what was your dental school experience like?
When you put it like that, the wrong decision. But no, I think dental school was an interesting one because it's another transition. Like becoming a teenager, you become an adult pretty much. You're thrown out into the world. I mean, I wasn't so much thrown out into the world because my parents lived in Birmingham. I went to Birmingham Dental School, but I did live in halls of residence and have a relatively sort of independent lifestyle compared to living in my parents' house. And you're thrown into this, and you're an adult. It's all self-directed learning. You have to learn all this yourself. But also at dental school, you're kind of still treated a bit like a kid. It's a lot more focused than a lot of degrees because you have to go to the lectures, you have to attend for the clinics, you have to do all these things. Whereas you've got other courses which aren't quite as pushy and focused. So I think it was. I had a really good time at uni. I walked the middle of the tightrope, I suppose, on getting through all my exams and passing, but also having a good social life. I definitely wasn't one of the students who stayed in all night.
So you didn't overdo party. You didn't overdo education. I'm
not going to say I didn't overdo partying. I think on occasion that might have happened. Not every night. Yeah, but also
every night.
I did study as well. So I think it's an interesting balance, and I think the thing is, you need to find that balance as I came out of dental, A levels, took a gap year, went into dental school, and it was all. It's just always these changes and transitions are difficult, I think, for anyone, but especially at those ages where you're really swapping and changing quite regularly what your position in the world is, and how you fit into situations. And it's a very odd dynamic. And then
did you
come
say
out
you
the other
did
end.
a gap year, Doug?
I did, yeah. I wish I could say
What
I
did you
did
do
loads. I worked in a landscape gardening company. I also worked in a hospital as a theatre porter, and then I was the junior instructor of my martial arts club, and then at the end of the gap year, just as I was coming into first year of uni, that I started teaching the guitar. So as a Saturday job. So yeah, I wish I'd gone traveling or done something a bit more, but I did that in my elective. That was fine. But it was one of those things where I should have gone with my gut instinct. But I think there was a girl involved as well. Yeah. I did a lot.
Do you still do martial arts?
So my younger son took up karate last year. So now Sunday mornings, although I haven't been for the last few weeks, Sunday mornings we go to a local karate club. And the other week I was trying to fight against some of the other guys in the club, and I realized my hips don't work quite. You thought I was going to burst into a Shakira song then, didn't you? My hips don't work quite like they used to. Not they don't lie, they just don't work. So I'm there trying to throw kicks at people's heads and getting halfway through and shouting ouch, and the instructor looking over going, "Oh, you're all right." I was like, "Yeah, I'm absolutely fine. I'm just 43."
But you kickboxed to a high standard, didn't you? As a younger man, you did kickbox to a national level.
So in '98, I used to compete. I would compete in Kung Fu Nationals, BKFA, and IAKSA, so the national competitions. And I used to do the yearly national competitions and do local competitions and stuff. So yeah, I used to enjoy that back when I was a lot younger. But then I got to uni and I still carried on. But it's just obviously work and things became more full on. So yeah, I could have been Bruce Lee. I could have been Jimi Hendrix, but I decided to be, I can't even think of a dentist. Doc Holliday, was it? I don't know.
Honestly, be Doug Watt. That spot's free for you.
Yeah,
you
that's what I did.
Yeah.
I thought, Jimi Hendrix, he's already there. Bruce Lee, he's already there. You know what? Dentistry's missing a superstar. So
dentistry needs a Doug Watt. That's what it needs. So you obviously did your what was it in VT back then? You qualified. You were an associate. How long were you an associate before you decided to get into practice ownership?
10 years. So I graduated 2003, and I did 10 years. Majority NHS practice. Then 2013, I moved into Euston Place.
And did you go there as an associate with a view to buying in, or was there an opportunity to buy in as a partner straight off?
No. So I bought in as a partner straight off. So it was a guy who I'd known for a good few years, who was retiring, and I bought his share of the business. And his wife used to work with me at one of the practices I worked with, and she sort of seemed to headhunt the people who took over from partners as they retired. So Paul Mulligan, who is one of my partners, he took over from someone that he used to work with Rosie in the practice, and then I took over from Andrew in 2013. So it's a very quick 10 years, really.
I never looked back.
I never looked back, indeed.
And it's quite a significant practice, isn't it? Because it's a private practice, 8 surgeries in Leamington Spa. There's 4 partners running it. And how have you found? Did you, whilst you got kind of approach, which is flattering and amazing in its own right, did you always see yourself getting into ownership in partnership with others as opposed to being a sole principal, or was it something that the opportunity came up and it just suited you?
I suppose. I was open to any of the options, really. I quite like the idea of partnership because the buck doesn't stop with you necessarily. In that, if you go away on holiday, there are other people there. There's always other people around. I've seen a lot of people who own practices solely, and although you might have associates, they never have the same level of care or drive towards a practice, I suppose, as you would as an owner, because they don't have to. They don't have that. If you go away on holiday, you've still got everything
Yeah.
you've still got to sort out who's covering you. You still have to know who's. So I think at the time I would have happily bought into a partnership. I would have probably looked to go as an associate with a view to buy from a dentist, say a retiring colleague or something like that. Or I also would have happily, set up a squat. I think probably setting up a squat would have been the least happily thing. I think since COVID, the idea of setting up a squat's been a lot more attractive because we've seen the number of new patients who just sort of flying into the practice without us having to actually do advertising or anything. Whereas if the thought of going somewhere and going, right, I'm going to put myself out there and say I'm taking on patients and no one turning up is quite a terrifying thing. And if you've got no word of mouth, you've got no basis to base that on, because I think, people putting their trust in you as a dentist is a big thing. It's quite a terrifying thing for a lot of people. So if you're new to the area and new to dentistry and no one knows anything, it's just that worry, I suppose, of how well that's going to go. So all of the options I think I would have been happy to try if there hadn't been an option to buy in. I probably would have gone with the squat option. But and I know friends who've done that and it's been successful. But and it's quite terrifying. I did look at a few practices to actually purchase outright as a principal. And, there were some that were okay, but a lot of the time the practices that get to the open market, there's you've got to do a lot of due diligence before you know whether it's right to buy. If you've worked in a practice, I suppose you know a lot more about the vibe of the practice and the feel of it. So that was my concern with buying a practice that someone was selling, is I didn't know really and what I was buying.
And if an outgoing principal's wife approaches you, there's already a soft introduction. And I must admit, I'm with you. Chris and I, we're in business together across a number of different businesses, and we've got other business partners. But I don't know whether I'd like the idea of being a solopreneur where literally everything is on your shoulders and you have to do everything. I think I'm always very impressed by those people. So I understand the comfort that comes with partners. It's huge.
Yeah, and definitely. I think I'm impressed by those people. I think and you can do that very well if you can delegate and you can get in a good business manager, you can get in heads of parts of your team and you can build that side of the business. So it can run without you there. So if I'm not there, my practice manager, my head receptionist, all these people can take care of the business and it runs without me present. But I suppose I would worry if you're not good at delegating and the kind of person who has to be the boss and won't let anyone else be involved, that's when I think things can fall down a little bit and something's got to give, because no one can run a business solely on their own. No one can be a dentist in surgery full time and then run a practice in the evening or late at night or
too
weekends.
Many demands on your time.
There is, and it's getting worse and worse, with CQC compliance, with all the different consent processes we have to go through, all that kind of stuff. You just can't do it all yourself. I think if anyone who thinks they can will probably sort of drop a ball somewhere. I think you need team, you need backup on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we used to do a lecture. Do you remember how we used to do lectures? And we'd throw up on the board and we'd say, you've got to be a marketing manager, a sales manager, a finance manager, an IT manager, an ops manager, managing director, a strategy manager, a husband, a wife, a dad, or whatever. Yeah. Oh, and you have to be a dentist. Yeah. But that dentistry is basically 95% of your day, and you have to then cram in all these other things around you. It's just like.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just not mad, isn't it?
It's not really feasible, is it? And I think the more these businesses, I mean, the problem is we're automating things. We're making everything much more efficient, which you'd think would take the workload off us a little bit. But all it does is make us more efficient at doing more work. So, the automation, all the automated booking stuff, all the being able to send out recalls and things just means that, we're all as busy as we ever were. We're just doing more treatment in the same time.
It creates more space to fill.
Yeah, to fill with doing bits, whatever.
I was going to say it's quite remarkable that you fit so much in. So you obviously have a family, you have your music, you're a principal of practice, and obviously a day-to-day clinician. But you also enjoy learning. because you're heavily involved in the BACD and their conference. You're a board member. You're heavily involved in the Dental Tubules. So that learning element.
That was a busy one.
It was. I was going to say it's been a busy, because I think I saw you at both. I think I saw at Tubules and BACD, and you love it.
Yes,
you really enjoy being part of that.
Yeah,
and it's outside of the specific clinical learnings.
Did Doug have a guitar? Is the question.
He did it. I saw the guitar present at Tubules because he's in tubal tones. I didn't see the guitar at BAC.
I think I did have a miniature guitar in my room. I didn't bring it down. I had a little Taylor GS Koa Mini. It's at the back there somewhere. So I did take a guitar with me just in case I got bored, but I didn't have it. I think I played it once in the 4 or 5 days I was there.
Just in case.
Tubules, I had 4 guitars with me, or 5, I can't remember, but because we were playing in the band on the Thursday night. So it was lecturing all day on my hands-on course on the day. Then 2 45-minute sets with the band in the evening.
but you strike me somebody who has this ability to suck like every moment of enjoyment out of the things you do. So going to these courses isn't just about the clinical learning. There's more to it for you, isn't there? What other things does it give you by going to these events?
I think a lot of it is meeting people, and I don't want to say networking because that almost sounds too businessy. It's interactions with, it's not a focused networking thing where I'm trying to gain something from meeting people, because I'm not. It is just meeting people, interacting. And if there's interesting things. So a lot of the time I get now quite a few messages on social media and things about digital dentistry and asking me about scanners, 3D printers, all that kind of stuff. Because and it's usually people I've met, or because I've been on a lecture and then people ask me questions. I've given a lecture and people ask me questions. So I think that's the main thing. It's the interactions with people in a similar situation to yourself, or want to learn from you, or people I can learn off. So in the last few weeks I've had a lot of questions, but also I've been out for dinner with guys like Ashok Sethi, who's one of my mentors and an amazing clinician. So the fact I'm going out for dinner with someone who's I would love to be able to do some of the things he does surgically, and also I'm getting questions on courses of people who are MaxFax consultants and things like that, doing stuff that just blows my mind, asking me about digital stuff. So all of this is that sort of melting pot. I don't think you ever want to be the guy who thinks I'm the top guy, everyone comes to me to ask questions, because there's always so much learning from everyone. And I remember my dad always said to me that you learn more in the bar than you do in the lectures sometimes. And I think that stuck with me. And I think going to these things to speak to people and interact, I think that's one of the biggest part of any of these conferences or anything. And the tubular tones thing is great fun, hanging out with Simon, Andy, Alan, Stuart and Saab, and just doing music stuff. The day before Tubules, we went down to a practice studio about half an hour away and just spent 5 hours playing through our set lists and ruining our voices, ready for the next day of lecturing and singing in the evening. But it was great fun, and that kind of stuff. It's all human interaction, isn't it? It's all good fun. So that's what I like.
Yeah, you've mentioned digital
and sort of therapeutic as well.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and the thing is, if you don't feel so alone in the world if you're dealing with other people who are in a similar situation to you, and that's the thing with dentistry. It's a lonely job. It's sat in your surgery, you and your nurse and the patient all day. So actually being able to have those sort of moments of interaction, I think, is massive.
You've mentioned digital dentistry a few times in there. In the you've got CBTC scanners in your practice and millions of you said about 3D printers. As a kid, have you always been interested in tech, or is it one of those things that as dentistry's evolved and you've seen the opportunity within digital dentistry, you've embraced it more?
Yeah, I've always been interested in tech. So my brother's very into computers, and he works in IT now. My dad was very into computers, and so I've grown up with that sort of interest in computing and how things work. And my I suppose when I started in dentistry, that wasn't really a thing. There were digital X-rays just coming around 20 odd years ago when I graduated and things like that. But I think the sort of ability to bring all these together. It's great. I mean, I had my computer, my Amiga 500, when I was 12 years old, I think, and it had things like digital video capture devices on that, and then I got a little recording dongle for it, and then I got a PC later, and so all the time when I was at uni, when I had my PC in my room, I always had a recording set up for music, and just like sort of messed around and played with my guitar and did some songs and MIDI keyboard inputs into stuff, and just playing around with sounds, which at the time was I suppose a relatively basic setup compared to what you can do these days. Nowadays, obviously, I've got my sort of breakout box down here to plug all my guitars in. I've got 2 monitor speakers, microphones everywhere, and all the however many guitars that I don't want to say on a podcast, because it's a little bit embarrassing, and all the other stuff, and electronic drum kit in the background, all that kind of stuff. So the stuff now is amazing, and I've just really enjoyed watching how things have developed and changed. I think the thing with digital dentistry is there's been the CEREC stuff and things like that for years, but actually seeing even how it's evolved in the past 4, 5, however many years I've been sort of involved with 3Shape and using the Trios scanners, it's changed massively, and it's always changing, which is exciting and a bit different, and it's interesting to see what new bits come out and how you can apply them to clinical practice and how you can start using that. So I've always had an eye on tech, and I've enjoyed tech, and I've always found computers relatively intuitive. So it's good fun.
And how far into digital dentistry are we? Yeah, in terms of it's not been around for that long. Are we still early days? Because obviously AI is starting to creep in as well now.
Yeah, so I think we're sort of we're beyond the early adoption phase. I think we're into the mainstream adoption, and sort of early mainstream to mid mainstream now. I think it's getting to the point where there's a lot of people getting scanners. Whether they're getting the right scanner or not, another matter, but that depends on what type of practice they want to use it for. And I think it's getting to a point now where the new scanners that are coming out, I mean, they're more wireless scanners. There are more scanners that can scan over Wi-Fi, and you don't need a big sort of acquisition unit. You have to wheel around between surgeries and cart up the stairs and things to do this stuff anymore. All you need to move is a small camera room to room. So I think we're at the point now where it's a very feasible thing to, rarely take an impression for dentistry. Still, we take impressions. There are still reasons why you need to take impressions. But I think, with a lot of the tech, we can do it without impressions. You can digitally scan majority of things. CT scanning, as you mentioned, is taking a massive part in that, especially implant planning, but also wisdom teeth, things like crown lengthening, any surgical procedure. There are benefits to having CT scans. So I think, it's a massive area, and I think it's really coming to the point where people are starting to see it as a real option, rather than a few years ago where it's probably just picking up a toy.
Yeah. Is it also, I know that Chris talks about some work that he did with Dentistry years ago, where they had a new bit of kit, whatever it was, and they would explain technically what it can be done. But then what we did was actually converted that into patient benefits. And is all the things that are available and happening in digital dentistry, are they clearly being converted into patient benefits, or are they at a stage where they're enabling dentists to achieve better results or quicker results or whatever it might be? But do patients see the benefit of digital dentistry?
Yeah, I think they do. I think without necessarily even having to convert it, a lot of the time the patients, when you do something like a digital scan, or you make a crown same day, or any of these things, the patients are actually quite blown away by that. And a lot of patients are, when I'm scanning them, are saying, what's this? And I've already explained to them what I'm doing, but a lot of them don't get what I'm saying. So then I'm there clicking around with this thing, what's this? And they turn around and go, wow, that's an amazing bit of kit, isn't it? So I think the patients see the benefits from that perspective. I think the risk we have at the moment is the dentists are seeing scanners as digital impressions, and that alone. So it doesn't matter what scanner you can get. If you can get an impression out of it, that's all you need. Whereas there are so many tools wrapped in with these scanners that people aren't utilizing. And that's a lot of when I do give lectures and talks and things, a lot of the stuff is I'm showing how you can use these workflows. So starting with the end in mind for the patient. So for example, doing a 2-dimensional smile design, doing a photorealistic mock-up to give the patient an idea of where you're going, and then working your treatment plan back from that. And that's the really exciting thing, I think, with digital dentistry is 1, consent, 2, litigation, and 3, just predictability. The fact that you are going to the patient from the very start, this is what I'm aiming to give you. This is how we're going to do it. And this is, the steps to get there. But also the patient can then ask questions. And if you are doing this planning and you say, right, I have this set up, I have all this set up on a 3D digital model, you can look at it in so much more detail than if the patient's not there and you've got a set of models or you're looking at photos. You can actually zoom in and really sort of look into detail and say, actually, that's not going to work, or this plan is, or write up a letter to the patient saying, these are all the things that could possibly go wrong or right, or, all that I think focuses in on you can use a lot more detail from scanning and your digital workflows just to work out how you're going to proceed with your treatment planning. And the other thing I talk quite a lot about is co-diagnosis with the patient, whereby you show the patient their digital scan, photos, photo overlays, all that kind of stuff, and discuss it with the patient. The patient will then look at it and say, oh, I can see what the problem is. Or, you say you've broken this tooth, and they say, oh, but I don't like the look of that one, or I don't like this one. And actually then you get a dialogue with the patient about their own teeth and their own problems, and they're diagnosing their own problems. So you're not going to a patient saying, you need a crown, it costs X amount. You're saying, what do you think you need? And they're probably, potentially diagnosing more than you would as a dentist. And then you can get you into that discussion.
The litigation angle is an interesting one, isn't it? And the fact that you can, you're recording the scan, so as people, people can see what's going on. I think that's a real interesting one, actually.
I think that's a big one, because if you can say to a patient, so for example, I had a patient a few years ago who I did some little composites on her upper anterior teeth, and she said to me, "Oh, they look great, thanks, but." And this was the next day, she phoned up and she said, they look great, but since you've done them, this tooth has moved. I was like, what? She was saying her canine tooth had moved across her mouth. And I was like, what? Since I put some composite on your teeth yesterday, a rock solid tooth has drifted about 4 inches across your mouth. But I just sent her a picture of the scan and said, look, this is the scan we took however many months ago. That's where that's. Oh yeah, sorry. It just looks different because you've put the fillings on. So that kind of thing. Oh, wow. Even if it's a completely ridiculous thought that actually that tooth could have moved from a dentist's perspective, from a patient's perspective, they don't know that. They don't. It's not a ridiculous thought to them that you could put something up here and the tooth moved. And if she felt 100% that tooth was in a different place before I treated her, then instantly she's going to be thinking, oh, something's changed. But actually, if you've got that scan, you can go back and say, no, this was the presenting situation. This is where you are. And I think we don't take enough photos, let alone scans.
Yeah.
So one of my guys on the Dentsply Sirona thing, he was he was quite clever, and what he said was he effectively scans everybody's mouth when they arrive, and he said that way then I've got a complete record of their teeth when they came to me. So if anyone wants, if they break a tooth, you can say,
you can copy it
back the way it was. It's brilliant. That's really clever innovative ways of using them, aren't they?
Yeah, and so this is what I do now. Every new patient gets a scan, regardless. When they come in, the first thing they do is a scan, just to record your presenting situation. Just to say, look, actually, this is where you were when you came in. The other thing we use it quite a lot for is my nurse will then go into the scans and she'll take pictures of the scan and put that into treatment plan letters and treatment presentations for the patient. And then that's again another way of generating that conversation of consent. So we have a treatment plan PowerPoint that we put up on the screen, we chat through with the patient, and then we know, and that's all, then she's typing away at the keyboard while I'm discussing with the patient. So that's about as valid a consent process as we can imagine getting, because the patient's got all the information on each step of treatment. We've discussed it with them. We've said, this is the situation. This is what I suggest to resolve it. what do you think? And then they can ask the questions. Those are all noted down. And then you can prove the patient has not only been told what their problem is, their diagnosis, their treatment options, they've also discussed those treatment options and made a decision. And that's the whole of your consent process done, because you've got a way of discussing that and a framework through which to discuss it. And I think that's a really good option, because if I hold up a little black and white x-ray to a patient and say, see there, you've got a hole, you need a filling, okay, we'll book you in next week. That's not consent. That's just telling a patient something that they don't understand. Whereas this co-diagnosis, I think, is a huge thing and a big part of consent.
I think it's really smart, because actually if you think where you feel more engaged in the process, I don't know, whether it's buying a car or anything, it's more interesting and more exciting. And I guess with the new technology available in dentistry, it's never been easier for us as patients to feel involved in that process, with things appearing on TV screens and having those conversations. And I think turning it in that way must help build a greater bond between dentist and patient, and the trust bridge between the two as well, because they genuinely feel they're part of it.
And an understanding. Yeah, I think it's massive. So, I mean, I had a patient a few years ago, and this was before we were, no, it wasn't before we were scanning. We were scanning, but I had this chap who came in, and we took a filling out, and we looked at his tooth, and there was a crack running through it, and he was having no symptoms from it. And I said to him at that point, look, we can refill it, we can put a crown on it, we can do this, that, and the other. And I just said to my nurse at the time, just take a quick photo of that. She got the SLR camera out, got a mirror, we snapped it, took a photo of this crack. So we got a full sort of HD photo inside this tooth with a big crack running down the middle. And the guy says, oh, well, it's not hurting me, so can we fill it and we'll see how it goes. Anyway, about a year and a half later, the same chap comes back. This is hurting. This is the filling you did not that long ago. Why is it hurting, kind of thing? And I said, oh, I don't know. Usually, it wouldn't hurt at that point. It would hurt straight after or not. So I'm not sure what's going on here. And then my nurse taps me on the shoulder and points to the notes and said, so I read what her notes were, and it was just like, crack in the tooth, these options discussed with the patient. And she's brilliant. She writes tons of notes, pages and pages, reams of notes. And so all these notes on, if a patient comes in and says, oh, I've cracked a tooth, she'll write down, patient cracked a tooth on Marks and Spencer's olive bread. It's not just any olive bread, it's a stone in Marks and Spencer's olive bread. That's the kind of level of notes we're going for here. So there's this big picture put up on the screen with a crack right down the middle. So I said to the patient, oh no, look, you had a crack in the tooth. We told you this was potentially going to happen, and that the tooth would need to come out if it did. Also, we've got a note of what happened and when it was cracked and what, all this kind of stuff. So I think, that kind of level from a litigation point of view is where we need to be, or what we need to be doing. And, we're not going to do it every time. We're not going to get it perfect every time. But if you've got a situation like that, where you've got a crack in a tooth and you've got an HD photo of it, and, all these notes saying not only what tooth it was, but which brand of olive bread it was cracked on, that's a different level, isn't it?
I don't think we're going to get this episode sponsored by M&S, are we? They're olive bread.
No, I don't think so. It was Aldi olive bread. Do Aldi do olive bread? I don't even know. Anyway,
I have no idea. Would you say?
I'm sure anyone that's still got a stone in bread won't be happy.
No. It wasn't bread. It was. Oh, I don't know. It was a locally shot pheasant with buckshot in.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that was
there we go.
Much
safer.
That works.
Much safer. Would you say your dentistry has influenced your music, or your music has influenced dentistry, or are they just two separate parts of your life that run along happily but in parallel?
I think there's sort of every part of your life will influence other areas, and I think the thing is, if you are particular about a certain thing and you find a degree of focus on it. So like with guitar, probably teenage years, I spent hours practicing guitar, and I think it helps you focus and helps you develop a mindset on how you get places. And I suppose when I was training as a dentist, I'd spend a lot of time just listening to music while I was revising and reading stuff. And it's interesting. I remember my mum saying, how can you possibly concentrate while you're doing that? You need to turn the music off and just concentrate. And then I'd turn the music off, I'd look at the book, and I'd fall asleep. Actually, from my perspective, it helped me focus and I suppose there's lots of different interplay. Also, playing the guitar, it does help quite a lot with finger mobility and dexterity. So hopefully it's helped me a little bit. Build muscles in my fingers that help me pull people's strong tongues and cheeks out of the way.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. I wonder how many dentists, just thinking on that dexterity thing, I wonder how many dentists do sort of play a musical instrument of some description or make models or something, because you're right, it is such a that I can remember Frank, the old Frank, Frank Taylor, where the original guy, he used to say on lectures, he'd say, you spend your whole day looking in a hole this big for a hole this big, he said, and then you're trying to do all these things, and he's so true, because I suppose as a patient, you just like in you go.
And we're talking now with magnification, loops, lighting, all that kind of stuff. You're talking fractions of millimeters. You're looking at preparing and things like that. And I suppose a degree of sort of dexterity, muscle memory, all that kind of stuff will come from practicing dentistry, but also doing that sort of hand-eye coordination, the repetitive motion, all that kind of stuff, I think really helps on guitar and with dentistry. So there's got to be some sort of interplay and benefit.
It's a supremely uncomfortable working position, isn't it, really? No matter how much they try and make it into, whatever, your bambacks or whatever. When you actually look at what you guys are doing, the answer is you're constantly twisting or leaning.
I sometimes I have a microscope, so I use that, and I use loops, and I use a saddle stool and everything else. But at the end of the day, I'm 6'5". That I'm gonna get back
bending
back
over somewhere, right?
Whatever happens, I've got long levers, so there's going to be issues.
Do you do exercise, Doug? Do you sort of do exercise for that? I've never thought about it, really asking dentists whether they do back strengthening exercise or stuff.
So a few years ago, I was doing quite a lot of weights and core stuff, and I did quite well on that. But I must admit, over the last few years, I've definitely let that go a bit. It's so when I was doing a lot of the weightlifting stuff, and not weightlifting so much, weight training, I wasn't like. But I did.
Can't play guitar then.
Well, no, too bulky on the fingers.
That's right. Yeah.
So I can press the frets really hard, but it breaks the neck, and I've got indents in my guitar where my fingers have gone. None of that. I can press really hard, but not very quick. But no, I was doing a lot more stuff, and I did find a lot of the back pain and things I was experiencing have gone, and then I probably rested on my laurels a bit since, and I haven't done as much. But it's something I think and again, this last few months has been absolutely manic, just with, so as you're saying, tubules, BACD, and in the intervening weeks I've had lectures to give and things like that. So I've been doing quite a lot the last few months, and then obviously working in practice and all the other fathering and husbanding and all the other things that come along with that. So it's something I really should make more time for, and I think it's really important, but I just don't really. Sometimes it drops by the wayside, but I've now signed up for a 100-mile bike ride next May. So I'm doing my this bike ride through London next May. So I need to get on and get a bit of exercise too.
You got his bike recently, didn't you?
He's on there as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I saw him at BACD, and I think I said to him, I don't think I've ever met James before, and I think the first thing I said to him was, "Oh, I'm on that bike ride, the same one as you're doing next May." He probably thought, this guy's very strange. But no. So that should be good fun.
Over the years, you've done very sporty things with the bike ride coming up, and your scuba dive and snowboarding and the kickboxing. Sport is often characterised as being, people do it because there's a competitive element to it. Would you say you're a competitive person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
I am. Yeah. Yes. I'm. No. I am competitive. I think I used to enter all the competitions, kickboxing wise, snowboarding, not so competitive then because skiers were always quicker. And as I say, I've got size 15 feet, so they just trail in the snow when I try and turn. So that's not, can't go too quick. It's more like snow surfing than snowboarding when I do it because the board's so bloody big. Then I guess I'd relatively so. I don't think I'm stupidly competitive. I'm not the kind of person who turns everything into a competition. So I'm not going to shake someone's hand and crush it till they cry or anything like that because I want to win. But I will be. I'd like to say healthily competitive. I still let my kids win sometimes when I play games and things like that. I'm not going to be that guy.
Honestly, I think it's healthy.
I'm not going to punch you if I don't win.
I think being competitive is genuinely healthy.
Competition.
But I worry sometimes that younger people, it's kind of getting lost in society where, at school level you can't compete.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a badge for coming seventh.
I think you need it, don't you?
We do.
And then when someone does win, they're angry at them.
Yes.
I was never the kid who cried if they lost a race because I wasn't great at running. I was always good at swimming. I was never that kid who cried when I lost. But I, obviously felt gutted if I did lose in the same way. But I think a degree of competition is necessary. Really, if you don't compete, there's if there's no competition, there's no reason to strive to improve. I think. If everything's at the same level, you'll never improve. If every guitarist out there only played G, C, and D, why bother with E and A minor? There's nothing to drive you to get better. If everyone was at the same level, we'd never get any progress in anything. So if everyone said, "Oh, dentistry is just about getting people out of pain," then we just take every tooth out that we came against and we never looked at ways to replace them. Everything, and we'd all have no teeth. So I think you need something to push you and drive you to improve.
And life is generally competitive, isn't it? It's as simple as that. I could never quite understand I can't remember. It was after I went to school, but the governments had all this great idea that nobody ever won anything and nobody ever lost because you didn't have winners at sports day. You just had competitors and stuff like that. And it's just like, but life's a bit of a competition, really.
I suppose I can see the sort of being kind to kids and not trying to damage their mental health. I can see why they do it. And I think that's going to be different with different types of kids as well. Some kids will thrive on competition, some won't, some will hate competition. And I think it's more an issue of blanket treating every child in the same way. And if you've got a kid who's not competitive, isn't interested in competition, don't put him into competition. Be aware of it. Don't insist they compete in school sports days. Don't insist they do this because they're not going to do it. Whereas if you've got all the competitive kids, then they'll push each other to get further. I think, it's horses for courses. And I think education of children is a massively important thing, and I think having too much of a blanket way of educating and pushing children to do stuff or not is a worry. And I think you've got kids who will learn very well in one way, but if that's the only way that's taught, because 90% of the kids will learn that way, what happens to the 10% who don't? They don't achieve their potential. So I think there is a place for competition, and I think there's a place for being very aware of people's differences and who should be treated in a specific way based on their ability to compete or their inability to compete.
And I think it's about education, as you say. I think it's about education. And interesting, I have this great thing that I must have told so many people about. There was a TV show years ago where basically they took people and they just assessed them on non-academic sort of ideas. And then I can remember them saying to this woman who worked in an office, they said, "You'd make a really good free diver." And she said, "But I can't swim." And they said, yeah, but you've got the temperament. And they said, "Would you be prepared to try?" And she tried, and she became British champion free diver. And it was brilliant because it was not academic. It was about her attributes. And I always think it's always stuck with me in the fact of, everyone's got a skill. It's just we need to find it sometimes.
I just worry if I had that kind of conversation, they'd say something like, "You'd make a really good mortician." Why? Because you're not funny, you're not friendly, and you'd work best on your own with dead people. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah, there we go.
I'd end up with something really embarrassing. No offense to any morticians listening, or you'd be the world's best. Something really embarrassing. I don't know. I'm being very aware that I can't insult anyone now. I'll just stop before I say something.
Even made an apology to the morticians in there. I don't think we get heavy listening numbers from the mortician community.
No,
so I think
I'd be surprised if we got
you watch it well now.
Brilliant if we did that.
Yeah. All of a sudden they'll be like the British Morticians Association have their public enemy number one. Yeah.
Yes,
he's a dentist.
We facilitated it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And, he's dead and buried. Sorry, bad mortician joke.
Doug, we always finish up in the same way, where we like to get to the core of who you are. So, if you were given the opportunity to be a fly on the wall in a situation, where would that be, and when would it be, and who would you be with?
Yeah, I'm going to be interested in this one.
Yeah, so I had to think about this, and once I got all the wildly inappropriate stuff out of the way, there are a few. Yeah, no, I just won't even go into that. Sorry, they're all going around my head now. So I was thinking that I'd love to. Yeah. No, anyway, I'll carry on. What I was thinking was I'd love to be. Yeah, sorry, my mind went way off then. Megan Fox featured it. It was all kind of weird. No, I'd love to be a fly on the wall. So I was thinking when Dave Grohl was writing a song like Everlong, or just to see where he went with what the creative process was, how he sort of went from
brilliant.
This, I've got this chord. Okay, I'm going to do that to a drop D tuning, and then I'm going to play this, and then how did he come up with? Did he start with the guitar? Did he start with the vocals? Did he start with hello, I'm waiting here for you, and then put the guitar to that? I just love. I'd love even more to have a conversation. So a talking fly on a wall would be even better, because I could say, "What are you thinking right now?" And he'd go, "Shit, a talking fly," that kind of stuff.
Have you ever seen that one with Riders on the Storm on YouTube?
No.
So there's a great one on Rise in the Storm, and the guy says he basically goes through how they got to create Riders on the Storm, and it's fascinating because I'm not a musical creative, and obviously you are, and it just strikes me that someone goes, "Oh, that could be quite good," and then flip, and then that refining process is just fascinating.
Yeah, and I think being able to know what someone is thinking while they're doing that, how they got there, how what. Just that process fascinates me, of how different, because obviously every different musician sounds different, but they have a sound. So you listen to a Foo Fighters song, it's a Foo Fighters song because of the way it's been written, or certain chord progressions, certain bridges, certain things they use that are that Foo Fighters sound. And whether it's a cognizant thing that they actually think, right, this is what we put in here, or it's just something they like the sound of, so they play it again and again, and it always features in, or that sort of certain way of turning that chord progression round into a chorus versus verses. That worked well. That's quite interesting to me. Although that said, if I had been there and the song Everlong then features the line, "Oh my God, a talking fly," or something like that, it might have ruined the song and Dave Grohl's entire career. But anyway.
But so many bands have that as well, don't they? You say, so I'm thinking of Coldplay as well. If you hear Coldplay music, even if you hadn't heard the tune before, you'd probably know it was Coldplay. But Dave Grohl was in Nirvana as well before the Foo Fighters. But that was,
so he was the drummer in...
but that was quite different. So obviously there was a reinvention with the Foo Fighters that was distinctly different from Nirvana.
Yeah, so I think probably you'd find that a lot of the songs written by Nirvana were written by Kurt Cobain,
right,
and then Dave Grohl as well, or they were written by Kurt, or they were written by Dave, or a combination of factors. And then I suppose Dave Grohl probably wrote a lot of the Foo Fighters stuff. But if you listen to the first album he wrote, which was actually just the EP titled Foo Fighters, the first 2 songs on it, Big Me and This Is a Call, both of those songs sound very different to later on Foo Fighters songs. They're quite melodic, quite light, quite sort of fun songs. Very much changed then in the colour and the shape when he had a band behind him. So the interesting thing about the Foo Fighters EP is he wrote and recorded all of it himself, I think in about a week. So he wrote, he did the bass lines, he did the guitar, he did the drums, he did the vocals, he did the backing vocals. It was all Dave Grohl. And then he got a band to play it live later. And that's when he sort of built the Foo Fighters. So he wrote and recorded the whole thing himself. But then I suppose as more people featured into the band and, you know, they wrote stuff together, I suppose it probably changed. And, you know, everyone matures and changes throughout their career. But yeah, I think all of that's fascinating how it's different. And as you say, Coldplay have a very specific sound. I remember when I was learning guitar, probably even later than that, when I was teaching guitar, my guitar teacher is a chap called Adrian Rose, who's a phenomenal guitarist, really nice guy, and you know I still see him every so often nowadays. And I remember saying to him at one point he said something about Manic Street Preachers, and I said, but the thing about Manic Street Preachers is all their songs sound the same, and he said, yeah, but it's a good song. It just took me a moment. I was like, oh yeah, it is a good song, but just cracked me up. It's one good song. Repeat it again and again throughout all the albums. But you know, you get that. You know, you do get that. Some bands are much more samey in their music. You know, as it goes through, rather than you know other bands have a bit of it. But there's always the sound, isn't there? There's always a sound. Like you hear a song, and you go, oh, this is. Whoever you can tell, can't you? Or the majority.
Yeah, this is Adamant.
Yes, yeah.
with his two drum sets or whatever. It was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
was that Prince Charming?
By saying Adamant, yeah, Prince Charming, yeah, it was. Yeah.
Adam who? Sorry, that's way beyond my time. I should say Adam who?
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
quick backtrack.
Yeah,
so whether there's a
okay, bye.
I was going to say whether there's a link to the follow-up question here, Doug, and because our follow-up question is if you could meet somebody, if you were given the opportunity to sit down and have a cup of tea or a pint of beer, who would you like the opportunity to sit down and meet?
So this is interesting because I was on another podcast a few weeks ago, and I was worrying everything I said was going to be exactly the same. So I've tried to mix it up and throw a few extra different words in. So it's a very different answer to a similar question that was slightly different. So believe it or not, it's not a musician. And the question then was about a dinner party with 3 people, whereas obviously this is one-on-one. So I've thought about this again, and I think it'd be Ryan Reynolds.
Oh,
really random one.
Is it Canadian actor?
Canadian actor who played Deadpool.
Yeah.
Just because I think he is hilarious, and I would love to get to know if that's actually what it. You know, you see it. We were watching
the
Wrexham FC program because you know he's bought Wrexham FC.
With the other guy. Yeah,
bought it with a guy. Yeah, with Rob McElhenney. And so he's bought this Welsh football club that's failing, and you know the whole series is about how he's doing it. But he just comes across as a really funny guy. But there was a scene in that where he's in the pub with this Welsh guy, and he said something, you know, just being funny like he seems to be. And this Welsh guy obviously took quite a lot of offence to it, and I thought he's going to be swinging at him, and I was thinking, bloody hell, this is quite interesting. But I just think he'd be a very funny guy as long as he didn't turn it on you. It's just funny seeing this sort of working class lad from Wales getting pissy with Ryan Reynolds just really amused me. I don't know why, maybe it shouldn't. And this. You know, this scene, but yeah, I think he'd be a really interesting person to meet, and he's quite funny. And if you look at his Twitter feed and Instagram and social media stuff with his wife Blake Lively, they're always ribbing each other quite badly, and I think that's quite, I try not to get into that kind of spat online with my wife because I know I'll lose. But yeah, it seems quite amusing. Yeah. I'll lose one way or another. Brilliant. Whether it's online or in real life. I will always lose.
Doug, I've enjoyed your company immensely. Like I say, you're always
it's been brilliant.
You're always good fun. You've always got great stories. I think the way you are so relaxed in your outlook with everything is a credit to you. I think music has a big influence on that. Honestly, I think it's good stuff. So I think
you say that I'm like a swan, like this underwater. Yeah, I look relaxed on the surface, but actually in here it's all going round.
Yeah. So many of us are. So many of us are.
We should get Doug to write a Dentology podcast song.
Yeah, I did a podcast with two guys, Stuart Campbell and Michael Tang, up in Scotland. So they did a podcast.
Yeah.
I did that with them right before the lockdown, and since then they've asked me to do a few songs to put on. So a few of their podcasts have had me doing tunes, and one of them, the Scottish guys, and they asked me to do The Same Jeans by I can't remember the band. The Scottish band anyway, and I did this very Scottish song as the intro to one of their podcasts. So yeah, I'm not sure it increased the listeners in any way, shape or form. But,
two Scottish bands. I think it's the Proclaimers and the Bay City Rollers. So.
The Proclaimers. Did you say the Proclaimers first?
I said that. Okay, that's the only two I know. The
Yeah, okay. I thought you said something other than Proclaimers, and I thought you can't miss the Proclaimers on that one. Yeah, no, but yeah, the Proclaimers. No, I can't think of the name of them. Yeah, The Same Jeans.
It could have been Wet, Wet, Wet. I suppose they're Scottish, aren't they?
Yeah.
Are they?
I think Charlene Spiteri from Texas. She is Scottish.
Oh yeah.
She's Scottish.
There's probably more out there than we know.
Lewis Capaldi.
Scottish bands.
Lewis Capaldi.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's Scottish. Yeah,
so I said this. Sorry, funny story that happened. So I was there was something about Lewis Capaldi on telly, or there was a picture of him or something, and I turned to my nurse and I said, Lewis Capaldi's a funny looking one, isn't he? And she just burst out laughing. I said, why? And she said, oh, my sister's boyfriend thinks he looks like you. And I just self-burn, they're rare. And the other one that happened to me was I was in Alton Towers, and I was walking along in Alton Towers, and this guy said to me, "Oh, can you tell me the way?" He goes, "Excuse me, mate, can you tell me the way to?" And he went, "Oh my God, you look just like James Corden." And I said, "Where did you want to go again?" And he said, "Oh, whichever ride." I said, "It's up there." "No, I don't," and just walked off. And he said, as if that's ever something you say to someone in polite, "You look just like James Corden." Great, thanks. So I look like James Corden and Lewis
Especially
Capaldi.
You're 6'5".
And a 6'5" James Corden, Lewis Capaldi mesh up, who ends up in the end looking just like Alec Jones. So I don't know. I have many celebrity lookalikes. Yeah, never Brad Pitt. So
No. You got lots of options to choose from, though, which is good.
Exactly, and none of them particularly flattering, sadly.
Well,
and on that
bombshell, I think we should go back to Ryan Reynolds. To be honest, I think that was a much better. We could finish on a high.
If someone told me I look like Ryan Reynolds, yeah. And then this other guy said I look just like Ryan Reynolds in his peak.
Perfect. What we'll do is we'll edit that so we finish on the Ryan Reynolds, as opposed to a balloon that sounded like it was slowly deflating.
A Lewis Capaldi-esque.
Thank you and good night,
James Corden.
Right, Doug, we'll let you go.
A good singer and a funny guy. I can take it.
That's true.
Absolutely. It's been a blast. Thank you very much. And like I say, we know you're busy. We've got a lot going on, so it's been a fabulous chat. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.